Okay, it looks like we're live. Sorry I'm late, guys. Let me know about the audio in the chat, please. We had San Pedro today, and I thought I made this stream for 11:11, and it was 10:30, so I guess I didn't show up. And when I did show up, I'm high as hell, so that's awesome. I'm sure this is going to be extra interesting. It's been a great day. It's true. And this is the final book of Transcendental Magic, the final chapter of the Book of Hermes. Let me check it with the chat before I get started because I don't want to find out that the audio sucks halfway through or whatever. You know, it's lame. I can't get out of this for some reason. There we go. Can somebody let me know about the audio in the chat, please? Because, well, whatever. I'll assume it's fine. I guess. Yeah, it's been a hell of a journey through this book and through life while the book has been happening. And the book often has reflected the things that are happening in the life, which is no surprise if you understand this macrocosm, microcosm. You know that everything is a reflection of the one in the all, you know. In fact, last night I saw a beautiful illustration of this from John Coltrane. The circle of fifths, for those of you that are non-musicians, is a tool that musicians use when they're beginning mostly, but it's every five notes, right? So C, D, E, F, G. Go back a half step. Now you have F sharp. And then as you go around, you accumulate more sharps, right? So Coltrane zoomed out and he made it 5 octaves. And then he drew lines between the 5 octaves, and there's a pentagram. And it's still 5. You know what I mean? 5 notes apart, it becomes 5 octaves, and there's just the pentagram, which is 5. As above, so, you know what I mean? And there's way more to that story that we'll get into in a future video because it's super interesting. And I guess Coltrane got into Hermeticism and the occult and whatnot, and he made a bunch of these weird discoveries and diagrammed them all out, and I'll dig them up and we'll mess with them. I fucks with it. So, okay, let's get into this. Let's see what Hermes has got to say in his closing chapter. The Book of Hermes. We approach the end of our work and must here give the universal key and utter the final word. The universal key of magical works is the key of all ancient religious dogmas, the key of the Kabbalah and the Bible, the little key of Solomon. Now, this clavicle, regarded as lost for centuries, has been recovered by us, and we have been able to open the sepulchres of the ancient world, to make the dead speak, to behold the monuments of the past in all of their splendor, to understand the enigmas of every sphinx, and to penetrate all sanctuaries. Among the ancients, the use of this key was permitted none but the high priests, and even its secret was confided only to the flower of the initiates. Now, this was the key in question, a hieroglyphic and numeral alphabet expressing by characters and numbers a series of universal and absolute ideas. Then a scale of 10 numbers multiplied by 4 symbols and connected with 12 figures representing the 12 signs of the zodiac, plus the 4 genii of the cardinal points. The symbolic tetrad, I knew it. I was going to talk about the Coltrane thing, and he's going to go there right away. I swear to God, because there's this part of the diagram I was describing. It has to do with augmented chords, and anyways, we'll get into that later. But the symbolical tetrad, represented in the mysteries of Memphis and Thebes by the 4 forms of the Sphinx, the man, eagle, lion, and bull, correspond with the 4 elements of the old world, water being signified by the cup held by the man, or Aquarius. Go ahead and come in. We got a live studio audience tonight. Mr. Nick Master, retreat guest. Plenty San Pedro puddle of colors over there. Wait, the cat, though. Get the cat. Don't let the cat in. Well, too late. Forget about it. Don't worry about the cat. Just let the cat. It's just if she jumps up here and grabs the camera, I'm going to be pissed. Where were we? Puddle of colors and shit. Correspond with the 4 elements of the old world, water being signified by the cup held by the man or Aquarius, air by the circle or nimbus surrounding the head of the celestial eagle, fire by the wood which nourishes it, by the tree fructifying in the heat of earth and sun, and finally the scepter of royalty, which the lion typifies, Earth by the sword of Mithras, who each year immolates the sacred bull and together with its blood pours forth that sap which gives increase to all fruits of earth. Now, these four signs, with all their analogies, explain the one word hidden in all sanctuaries, and I can elaborate on that a little bit. So this Coltrane thing I was talking about, back to that example, in Western music, we have three. We have the tetrad that becomes the four, which is the like a major seven chord, right? So that's one example of it. And then more specifically, or in greater detail, the four fundamental forces of physics. Gravity actually isn't really one, because it's sort of a consequence of the other three, right? But so there's another one of those fours. The chair I'm sitting on with its stability, like structurally, it's the four is like holding the universe together and constituting it, and all of these forces of physics have a correlation with each one of the elements, right? So let's see what else he has to say about this, though, before I go elaborating and then find out that I didn't need to. That word which the bacchantes, bacchantes, partiers, seem to divine in their intoxication when they work themselves to frenzy, for Ie Yevohe was the name of the four sorry guys, it's a little blurry. Io Evohe, I'm not sure what that's a reference to. I would think it would say like Io Elohim or something. What then was the meaning of this mysterious term? Pray tell. It was the name of the four primitive letters of the mother tongue. The Yod, symbol of the vine or paternal scepter of Noah. The He, type of the cup of libations and also of maternity. The Vow, which joins the two and was depicted in India by the great mysterious Lingam. Such was the triple sign of the triad in the divine word. Then the mother letter appeared a second time to express the fecundity of nature and woman, and to formulate the doctrine of universal and progressive analogies descending from causes to effects and ascending from effects to causes. Moreover, the sacred word was not pronounced, it was spelt and read off in four words, which are the four sacred words, Yod, He, Vav, He. The learned Gaffarel regards the teraphim of the Hebrews, by means of which they consulted the oracles of the Urim and Thummim, as the figures of the four Kabbalistic animals, which symbols, as we shall presently show, were summed up in the sphinxes or cherubs of the ark. In connection with the usurped teraphim of Micas, he cites a curious passage from Philo, which is a complete revelation as to the ancient and sacerdotal origin of our tarots. Gaffarel thus expresses himself. He, Philo the Jew, speaking of the history concealed in the before-mentioned chapter of Judges, says that Micas made 3 images of young boys and 3 young calves, 3 also of a lion, an eagle, a dragon, and a dove, all of fine gold and silver, so that if anyone sought him to discover a secret concerning his wife, he interrogated the dove, concerning his children, the young boy, concerning wealth, the eagle, concerning strength and power, the lion, concerning fecundity, the cherub or bull, concerning length of days, the dragon. This revelation of Philo, though depreciated by Gaffarel, is for us of the highest importance. Here, in fact, is our key of the tetrad, and here also the images of the 4 symbolical animals found in the 21st key of the tarot, that is, at the 3rd septenary, thus repeating and summarizing all the symbolism expressed by the 3 septenaries superposed. Next, the antagonism of colors expressed by the dove and the dragon, the circle or rota, formed by the dragon or serpent to typify length of days. Finally, the Kabbalistic divination of the entire tarot as practiced in later days by the Egyptian Bohemians, whose secrets were divined and recovered imperfectly by Etiela. We see in the Bible that the high priest consulted the Lord on the golden table of the Holy Ark, between the cherubs or bull-headed and eagle-winged sphinx, that they consulted by the help of the teraphim, Urim and Tumi, and by the ephod. Now it is known that the ephod was a magical square of 12 numbers and 12 words engraved on precious stones. The word teraphim in Hebrew signifies hieroglyphs or figured signs. The Urim and Tumi were the above and beneath in the east and west, the yes and no, and these signs correspond to the two pillars of the temple, Jachin and Boaz. When, therefore, the high priest wished to consult the oracle, he drew by lot the teraphim, or tablets of gold, which bore the images of the four sacred words, and placed them by threes round the rational, or ephod, that is, between the two onyx stones which served as clasps to the little chains of the ephod. The right onyx signified Gedula, or mercy and magnificence. The left referred to Geburah, and signified justice and anger. If, for example, the sign of the lion were found on the left side of the stone which bore the name of the tribe of Judah, the high priest would read the oracle thus: "The staff of the Lord is angered against Judah." If the teraphim represented the man or cup, and were also found on the left near the stone of Benjamin, the high priest would read, "The mercy of the Lord is weary of the offenses of Benjamin, which violate him in his love, whence he will pour out on him the chalice of his wrath." When the sovereign priesthood ceased in Israel, when all oracles were silenced in the presence of the Word made man, and speaking by the mouth of the most popular and mildest of sages, when the ark was lost, the sanctuary reigned, the temple destroyed, the mysteries of the ephod and teraphim no longer traced on gold and precious stones were written, or rather drawn, by some learned Kabbalists on ivory, parchment, gilt and silvered copper, and finally on simple cards, which were always suspected by the official church as enclosing a dangerous key to its mysteries. Hence came those tarots, the antiquity of which, revealed to the erudite court de Gebelin by the science of hieroglyphs and numbers, so exercised later the doubtful perspicacity and persistent investigation of Etiela. Court de Gebelin, in the 8th volume of his Primeval World, gives the figure of the 22 keys and 4 aces of the tarot and demonstrates their perfect analogy with all symbols of the highest antiquity. He subsequently endeavors to supply their explanation and goes astray naturally, because he does not start from the universal and sacred tetragram, the Io Evohe of the Bacchanalia. Holy shit. The Yod He Vav He of the sanctuary, the Yod He Vav He of the Kabbalah. Etiela, or Aliette, preoccupied entirely by his system of divination and the material profit that to be derived from it. Aliette, that's... Can't talk about it, sorry. Formerly barber. He was a barber? I don't get it. Formerly barber. Having never learned French or even orthography, pretended to reform and thus appropriate the Book of Thoth. In the tarot, now become very scarce, which he engraves, we find the following naive advertisement on the 28th card, the 8th of clubs. Atiela, professor of algebra and correctors of the modern blunders of the ancient Book of Thoth, lives in the Rue des Huissiers. I have no idea how to say that. Atiela would have certainly done better not to have corrected the blunders of which he speaks. His books have degraded the ancient work discovered by Court de Gebelin into the domain of vulgar magic and fortune-telling by cards. So when Crowley said that Iwas told him Zadi is not the star, I believe this is what he was correcting. There's another thing, though, that I will kind of give a hint to. I didn't understand this backwards Jehovah, basically. I just explained what it is, really. But he said of the Bacchanalia. And then it hit me that they took the sacred name of the old mysteries and reversed it to make Jehovah. That's what I'm gathering from this. And then right, this respelling of Aliette, Atelia or whatever, reflects that. It's like a hint, that it's not exactly, let's see, Jehovah. Yeah, it is. It's basically Jehovah backwards. And then he sort of reiterates the point by this scrambled, Etiella is aliete, scrambled. So there's a little clue to some things there. Atiela would have certainly done better not to have corrected the blunders of which he speaks. He proves nothing who tries to prove too much. Atiela furnishes another example of this old logical axiom. At the same time, his endeavors led him to a certain acquaintance with the Kabbalah, as may be seen in some rare passages of his unreadable works. The true initiates, who were Atiela's contemporaries, the Rosicrucians, for example, and the Martinists, who were in possession of the true tarot, as a work of St. Martin proves, where the divisions are those of the tarot and this passage of an enemy of the Rosicrucians. They pretend to the possession of a volume from which they can learn anything that can possibly be found in other books, which now exist or may at any time be produced. This volume is their reason, in which they find the prototype of everything that exists by the faculty of analyzing, making abstractions, forming a species of intellectual world, and creating all possible beings. See the philosophical, theosophical, and microcosmic ends. Conspiracy against the Catholic religion and sovereigns by the author of The Veil, raised for the curious. Okay, so they did possess that book, but it's not a book. The Book of Thoth is not written anywhere. And that's the Catholic Church, I think, maybe they really believed, they literally thought they had a book that could do this or something. But that's not what the Book of Thoth is. It's not a book. It's something that exists more like in the Akashic records or in the 0 point field than on parchment paper. The true initiates, we repeat, who held the tarot secret among their greatest mysteries, carefully refrained from protesting against the errors of Etiella and left him to reveal instead of revealing the arcana of the true clavicles of Solomon. Hence, it is not without profound astonishment that we have discovered intact and still unknown this key of all doctrines and all philosophies of the old world. I speak of it as a key, and such it truly is, having the circle of 4 decades as its ring, the scale of 22 characters for its trunk or body, and the 3 degrees of the triad for its wards. As such, it was represented by Postel in his Key of Things Kept Secret from the Foundation of the World. He indicates after the following manner the occult name of the key, which was known only to initiates. The word may read rota, this signifying wheel of Ezekiel or tarot. See, this thing with the reversing of the names again. It's like Christianity's distortion, Judaism's distortion, the veil's reversal of divinity. Okay, so signifying the wheel of Ezekiel or tarot, and then it is synonymous with the azot of Hermetic philosophers. It is a word which Kabbalistically expresses the dogmatic and natural absolute. It is formed of the characters of the monogram of Christ, according to the Greeks and Hebrews. And remember that Christ is the Christos, not a person. It's a spiritual fire, and you are definitely damned to hell without it. You know what I mean? And it is the Savior, and it is what animates matter. You know, if you take the Tetragrammaton and you add the letter Shin to the center of it, which is spiritual fire, and then pronounce it, it's Yoshua, it's the Savior. So the matters redeemed by spirit or animated by spirit. This is that Christos. The Latin R or Greek P is found between the Alpha and Omega of the Apocalypse. The sacred Tao, image of the cross, encloses the whole word, as previously represented in our ritual. Without the tarot, the magic of the ancients is a closed book, and it is impossible to penetrate any of the great mysteries of the Kabbalah. The tarot alone interprets the magic squares of Agrippa and Paracelsus, as we may satisfy ourselves by forming these same squares with the keys of the tarot and reading of the hieroglyphs thus collected. These are the 7 magical squares of the planetary genii, according to Paracelsus. So let's see. One way we have 9, 15, 6. We have 6. Yeah. Jupiter each way is, let's see, 24, 34, 40. Is it the same in every direction? I think that's the point of magical squares, but the sun adds to 111 in every direction. I remember that. Mercury. I'm surprised that the moon isn't all multiples of 9. By adding each of the columns of the squares, you will obtain invariably the characteristic number of the planet. And finding the explanation of this number by the hieroglyphs of the tarot, you proceed to seek the sense of all the figures, whether triangular, square, or cruciform, that you find to be formed by the numbers. The result of this operation will be a complete and profound acquaintance with all the allegories and mysteries concealed by the ancients under the symbol of each planet, or rather of each personification of the influences celestial human upon all the events of life. 111 is a number of truth, love, and unity, and that's the solar number. Light. This made me think of something else, but all the mescaline in my brain is making soup of it. Oh, yeah, okay. So one thing to consider in this regard, and also evidence of things the ancients knew, is that the planet Mercury, right next to the sun, right? They did not know that Mercury was a proton away from being gold. Not only that, as we speak, the salts in Mercury, and this was just discovered like a month ago or something, or maybe 2, because they were viewing Mercury through some sort of spectrometer or something, and they saw exactly this, like, bandwidth of light, or however it works. And so the light of the sun is literally turning Mercury, the planet, into photons, and it's the salt of the planet that is specifically becoming photons. So the planet Mercury is undergoing the alchemical transmutation that is as described in the file, basically. And you will see other relationships to things that should be allegorical, I guess you could say. And this is one of those wonderful opportunities that we have to actually sort of substantiate the universal mind concept with, like the numbers for the moon, for example, are expressed in the diameter, the distance from the Earth, and a whole bunch of other things. They all reduce to 9, right? And so 6 is the 9 reversed, the sunlight reflecting off the moon, and on and on and on and on and on. I'm just saying, basically, there's a lot of proof of what he's suggesting here at our current juncture. We have said that the 22 keys of the tarot are the 22 letters of the primitive Kabbalistic alphabet. And here follows a table of the variants of this alphabet according to diverse Hebrew Kabbalists. Being mind, man, or God, the comprehensible object, unity, mother of numbers, the first substance. All these ideas are hieroglyphically expressed by the figure of the jugular. His body and arms form the letter Aleph. Round his head there is a nimbus in the form of infinity, the emblem of life and the universal spirit. In front of him are swords, cups, and pentacles, and he uplifts the miraculous rod towards heaven. He has a youthful figure and curly hair like Apollo or Mercury. The smile of confidence is on his lips and the look of intelligence in his eyes. The house of God and man, the sanctuary, the law, the gnosis, Kabbalah, the occult church, the duad, wife, mother. Hieroglyph of the tarot, the female pope, a woman crowned with a tiara, wearing the horns of the moon and Isis, her head enveloped in a mantle, the solar cross on her breast, and holding a book on her knees, which she conceals with her mantle. a Protestant author of a pretended history of Pope Joan, has met with and used for good or bad in the interest of this thesis two curious and ancient figures of the female pope or sovereign priestess of the tarot. These two figures ascribe to her all the attributes of Isis. In one, she is carrying and caressing her son Horus. In the other, she has long and thin hair. She is seated between the two pillars of the duad, has a sun with 4 rays on her breast, places one hand upon a book, and makes the sign of sacerdotal esotericism with the other. That is to say, she uplifts 3 fingers only, the 2 others being folded to signify mystery. A veil is behind her head, and on each side of her chair the flowers of the lotus bloom upon the sea. I strongly commiserate the unlucky scholar who has seen in this antique symbol nothing but a monumental portrait of his pretended Pope Joan. The word, the triad, plenitude, fecundity, nature, generation, and the 3 worlds. Symbol, the empress, a woman winged, crowned, seated, and uplifting a scepter with the orb of the world at its end. Her sign is an eagle, image of the soul and of life. This woman is the Venus Urania of the Greeks and was represented by St. John in his Apocalypse as the woman clothed with the sun, crowned with 12 stars and with the moon beneath her feet. It is the mystical quintessence of the triad, spirituality, immortality, and the Queen of Heaven. The port or government of the Easterns initiated power, the tetragram, the quaternary, the cubic stone or its base. Hieroglyph, the emperor, a sovereign whose body represents a right-angled triangle and his legs a cross, the image of the Athenor of the philosophers. Why didn't I expect the book of Hermes to be the book of Thoth, which is the tarot? I don't know why I didn't see that coming. I think we're going through the entire 22. I mean, it's late to get started with some shit like that, but that might be what's happening here. Indication, demonstration, instruction, law, symbolism, philosophy, and religion. Hieroglyph, the Pope. Or did I skip one? No, I didn't. In more modern tarots, the sign is replaced by the image of Jupiter, the grand hierophant, seated between the 2 pillars of Hermes and of Solomon. Makes the sign of esotericism, and leans upon a cross with 3 horizontals of triangular form. 2 inferior ministers kneel before him, having above him the capitals of the 2 pillars and below him the 2 heads of the assistants. He is thus the center of the quinary and represents the divine pentagram, giving its complete meaning. As a fact, the pillars are necessity or law, the heads liberty or action. A line may be drawn from each pillar to each head, and 2 lines from each pillar to each of the 2 heads. Thus a square divided by a cross into 4 triangles is obtained, and in the middle of this cross is the grand hierophant. Posted up like so, and like so. The garden spider in the center of his web, were such a comparison becoming to the things of truth, glory, and light. Wait a minute. What happened there? Oh, we might almost say like. The garden spider in the center of his web were such a glory, were such a comparison becoming to the things of truth, glory, and light. Sequence, interlacement, lingam, entanglement, union, embrace, strife, antagonism, combination, equilibrium. Hieroglyph, between vice and virtue. Man between vice and virtue. Above him shines the sun of truth, and in this sun is love. Bending his bow, and threatening vice with his shaft. Damn. In the order of the 10 Sephirot, this symbol corresponds to Tiferet, that is, to idealism and beauty. The number 6 represents the antagonism of the 2 triads, that is, absolute negation and absolute affirmation. It is therefore the number of toil and liberty, and for this reason it connects also with moral beauty and glory. Weapon, sword, cherub, sword of fire, the sacred septenary triumph for royalty and priesthood. Hieroglyph, a cubic chariot with 4 pillars and an azure and starry drapery. In the chariot, between the 4 pillars, a victor crowned with a circle adorned with 3 radiant golden pentagrams. Upon his breast are 3 superposed squares on his shoulder, the Urim and Thummim of the sovereign sacrificer, represented by the two crescents of the moon in Gedula and Geburah. In his hand is a scepter surmounted by a globe, square, and a triangle. His attitude is proud and tranquil. A double sphinx or two sphinxes, joined at the lower parts, are harnessed to the chariot. They are pulling in opposite directions, but one is turning his head so that they are looking in the same direction. Oh, that is good. The Sphinx with head turned is black, the other is white, of course. On the square, which forms the forepart of the chariot, is the Indian lingam, surmounted by the flying sphere of the Egyptians. This hieroglyph, which we reproduce exactly, is perhaps the most beautiful and complete of all those which are comprised in the clavicle of the tarot. I hope so. It doesn't get any better than that in terms of the symbolism. Balance, attraction, and repulsion, life, terror, promise, and threat. Hieroglyph, justice with sword and balance. Good, horror of evil, morality, and wisdom. Hieroglyph, a sage leaning on his staff, holding a lamp in front of him and completely enveloped in his cloak. The inscription is the hermit or capuchin, an account of the hood of his oriental cloak. His true name, however, is Prudence, and he thus completes the four cardinal virtues which seemed imperfect to court de Gebelin and Etiella. Principle, manifestation, praise, manly honor, phallus, virile fecundity, paternal scepter. Hieroglyph, the wheel of fortune, that is to say, the cosmogonical wheel of Ezekiel, with a Hermenubis ascending on the right, a Typhon descending on the left, and a Sphinx in equilibrium above, holding a sword between his lion's claws. An admirable symbol, disfigured by Atiela, who replaced Typhon by a wolf, Hermenubis by a mouse, and the Sphinx by an ape. Fuck that guy, man. What the hell was he thinking? An allegory characteristic of Atela's Kabbalah. The hand in the act of grasping and holding. Hieroglyph, strength. A woman crowned with the vital infinity sign closes quietly and without effort. No way. Come on, man. They gotta calm down with this shit. Quietly and without effort. The jaws of a raging lion. Oh, no, man. Example. Instruction, public teaching. Symbol, a man hanging by one foot with his hands bound behind his back so that his body makes a triangle with apex downwards and his legs a cross above the triangle. The gallows is in the form of a Hebrew dowel, and the two uprights are trees, from each of which 6 branches have been lopped. We have previously explained the symbol of sacrifice and the finished work. The heaven of Jupiter and Mars, domination and force, new birth, creation and destruction. Hieroglyph, death, reaping crowned heads in a meadow where men are growing. The heaven of the sun, climates, seasons, motions, changes of life, which is ever new yet ever the same. It's all the same fucking day, man. Hieroglyph, temperance, an angel with the sign of the sun upon her forehead, and on the breast the square and triangle of the septenary, pours from one chalice into another the two essences which compose the elixir of life. The heaven of Mercury, occult, science, magic, commerce, eloquence, mystery, moral force, hieroglyph, the devil. The goat of Mendes, or the Baphomet of the temple, with all his pantheistic attributes. This is the only hieroglyph which was properly understood and correctly interpreted by Attila. The heaven of the moon, alterations, subversions, changes, and failings. Hieroglyph, a tower struck by lightning, probably that of Babel. 2 persons, doubtless Nimrod and his false prophet or minister, are precipitated from the summit of the ruins. One of the personages in his fall perfectly represents the letter Nyan. It's a weird way to spell it, but the heaven of the soul, outpourings of thought, moral influence of the idea on forms, immortality. Moral influence of the idea on forms. Hieroglyph, the burning star and eternal youth. We have already described this symbol. The elements, the visible world, the reflected light, material form, symbolism, hieroglyph, the moon, dew, a crab rising in the water towards land, a dog and a wolf barking at the moon, and chained to the base of 2 towers, a path lost in the horizon and sprinkled with blood. Composites, the head, apex, prince of heaven. Hieroglyph, a radiant sun, and 2 naked children taking hands in a fortified enclosure. Other tarots substitute a spinner, unwinding destinies, and others again, a naked child mounted on a white horse and displaying a scarlet standard. Vegetative principle, generative virtue of the earth, eternal life. Hieroglyph, the judgment. You know what's hilarious too? Somebody asked me to do a tarot reading, or if I do tarot readings for the first time in my life the other day, and now I'm like, it's like maybe 2 days later. It just strikes me as a cute coincidence. I'm sure she'll think so too. All right, where are we at here? Vegetative principle, generative virtue of the earth, eternal life. Hieroglyph, the judgment. Omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, without judgment. Without judgment. Our bodies are light, we are immortal. Our bodies are love, we are eternal. Omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, without judgment. Without judgment. A genius sounds the trumpet, and the dead rise from their tombs. These persons who are living and were dead are a man, woman, and child, the triad of human life. The sensitive principle, the flesh, eternal life. The letter Shin. There's our spiritual fire coming down. Hieroglyph, the fool. Oh boy. The spiritual fire is the fool, is it? The Christos is the fool. The zero, the nothingness, the air, the prince of air. A man in the garb of a fool, wandering without aim, burdened with a wallet, damn it, full, no doubt, of his follies and vices, and therefore empty. His disordered clothes discover his shame. He is being bitten by a tiger and does not know how to escape or defend himself. The microcosm, the sum of all in all, hieroglyph, Keter, or in the Kabbalistic crown between the 4 mysterious animals. In the middle of the crown is truth holding a rod in each hand. Such are the 22 keys of the tarot, which explain all its numbers. Thus, the juggler, a key of the unities, explains the 4 aces with their quadruple progressive signification in the 3 worlds and in the first principle. So also the ace of deniers, or of the circle, is the soul of the world. The ace of swords is militant intelligence. The ace of cups is loving intelligence. The ace of clubs is creative intelligence. They are also the principles of motion, progress, fecundity, and power. They are also the 4 fundamental forces of physics. They are also the 4 notes of the Western musical chord. They are also the 4 legs of this fucking chair. Each number multiplied by a key gives another number, which, explained in turn by the keys, completes the philosophical and religious revelation contained in each sign. Now, each of the 56 cards, 11, can be multiplied in turn by the 22 keys, 4. A series of 44. A series of combinations thus results, giving all the most astonishing conclusions of revelation and of light. 444. It is a truly philosophical machine which keeps the mind from going astray while leaving its initiative and liberty. It is mathematics applied to the absolute, the alliance of the positive and the ideal, a lottery of thoughts as exact as numbers, perhaps the simplest and grandest conception of human genius. The mode of reading the hieroglyphs of the tarot is to arrange them in a square or circle, placing equal numbers in antagonism and conciliating them by the unequal. 4 signs invariably express the absolute in a given order and are explained by a 5th. Okay, so the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, one of the major bits of symbolism that people don't often call attention to is that when you first create your environment, there's a circle. That's your universe. It's your microcosm. And you are the god of that circle. And then you create 4 points of stability, the 4 fundamental forces of physics. And then you're building from there your universe within that circle. And if you then draw a line from each of those 4 corners to the consciousness of the magician, you now have a pyramid with an eye at the top. And you have a habitable space rather than a 2D plane with a square and a circle. 4 signs invariably express the absolute in a given order and are explained by a 5th. Hence, the solution of all magical questions is the pentagram, and all antinomies are explained by harmonious unity. That's what's up. So arranged, the tarot is a veritable oracle and replies to all possible questions with more precision and infallibility than the android of Albert Magnus. Android? Excuse me? The fuck are we talking about here? I gotta look that up now. What is the android of Albertus Magnus? That's probably where we got the term. No, let's look that up right now. Fuck that, man. That's too weird. The android of Albert Magnus. What the fuck? The android of Albertus Magnus refers to a legend about Albertus Magnus, a 13th century scholar, 13th century of course, creating a mechanical human figure or automaton with the ability to speak and even engage in philosophical discussions. This legend, often described as a talking statue or head, is a fascinating example of how medieval thinkers explored concepts of artificial life and intelligence. Yeah, I wouldn't be so sure that this was just a thought experiment, bud. Consult the android on various matters, suggesting its role in divination or decision making. That is the origin of the word fucking android. I'm sure that's where that comes from. That is fucking crazy, man, because, like the alchemists gave birth to science, and like apparently we may have had AI like hella ages ago. Oh my gosh. An imprisoned person with no other book than the tarot, if he knew how to use it, could in a few years acquire universal knowledge and would be able to speak on all subjects with unequaled learning and inexhaustible eloquence. That sounds ridiculous, but it's not. It really isn't. Through observation of any single system, you can learn about all the other systems because all of the laws of the universe are exerting themselves on them. And you know what I mean? That's what he's saying there. That's what part of the holography of the universe concept is about, that they're all variations of expressions of the same fundamental equation, basically. This is why, you make a seashell with Fibonacci, you make a galaxy with Fibonacci, you make predictions about crypto with Fibonacci. You can predict historical periodicity with Fibonacci because there's one underlying pattern, and yeah, that's what he's getting at with all that. But okay, so the reason though that the tarot, I mean, when we were going through the symbolism, you should have noticed how solid it was. And so what they've done is compressed a whole bunch of information symbolically into these categories, and then things are kind of arranged by the 4 fundamental forces of physics. Each one of these cards is one of those things, So yeah, that's how the sophisticated, intricate details can emerge from something that simple. He's saying that you can learn anything from it, about anything. And it's like, what, if you understand the juxtaposition of those forces and then the symbols that they're carrying and how they relate to each other, that's not an overstatement at all. Unequal learning and inexhaustible eloquence. In fact, this wheel is the true key to the oratorical art and and the grand art of Raymond Lilly. It is the true secret of the transmutation of shadows into light. It is the first and most important of all the arcana of the great work. By means of this universal key of symbolism, please hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron. We're demonetized, and without your support, we are fucked. So it's great if you it's great if you support us. By means of this universal key of symbolism, all allegories of India, PayPal, Zelle, Egypt, and Judea are illuminated. The Apocalypse of St. John is a Kabbalistic book, the sense of which is rigorously indicated by the numbers of the Urim, Thummim, Teraphim, and Ephod, which are all resumed and completed by the tarot. The old sanctuaries have no longer mysteries, and the significance of the objects of the Hebrew cultus is for the first time comprehensible. Uh-oh. That sounds ominous. Who does not perceive in the golden table, crowned and supported by cherubim, which covered the Ark of the Covenant, which was probably made by a DMT-containing acacia, made of it, crowned and supported by cherubim, which covered the Ark of the Covenant, and the same symbols as those of the 21st tarot key. The Ark was a hieroglyphical synthesis of the whole Kabbalistic dogma. It included the Yod, or blossoming staff of Aaron, which was just the staff of Hermes, the caduceus. He dropped it, turned into a snake and all that. The He, or cup. The I should have brought some water up here, man, and I didn't. The Gomor, containing the manna. The two tablets of the law, two tables of the law, whatever, an analogous symbol to that of the sword of justice, and the manna kept in the Gonor, four objects which interpret wonderfully the letters of the divine tetragram. Gaffarel has learnedly proved that the cherubim or cherubs of this ark were in the likeness of bulls, but what he did not know was that instead of two, there were four, two at each end, as the text expressively says, though it has been misconstrued for the most part by commentators. The 18th and 19th verses of the 25th chapter of Exodus should read thus. Is he correcting the Bible right now? And thou shalt make two bulls or sphinxes of beaten gold on each side of the oracle. And thou shalt make the one looking this way and the second that way. The cherubs or sphinxes were, in fact, coupled by twos on each side of the ark, and their heads were turned to the four corners of the mercy seat, which they covered with their wings rounded archwise, thus overshadowing the crown of the golden table, which they sustained upon their shoulders, facing one another at the openings and looking at the propitiatory. The ark, moreover, had three parts or stages representing Atzilut, Yetzirah, and Bria, the three worlds of the Kabbalah. The base of the coffer, to which were fitted the four rings of the two levers analogous to the pillars of the temple Jachin and Boaz, the body of the coffer, on which the sphinxes appeared in relief, and the cover overshadowed by the wings. The base represented the kingdom of salt, to use the terminology of the adepts of Hermes. The coffer, the realm of Mercury, or Azot, and the cover, the realm of sulfur, or fire. The other objects of the cultus were not less allegorical, but would require a special treatise to describe and explain them. Saint Martin, in his natural table of the correspondences between God, man, and the universe, followed, as we have said, the division of the tarot, giving an extended mystical commentary upon the 22 keys, but he carefully refrained from stating whence he derived his plan and from revealing the hieroglyphics on which he commented. Pastel showed similar discretion, naming the tarot only in a diagram of the key to his arcana, and referring to it in the rest of his book under the title of the Genesis of Enoch. The personage of Enoch, author of the primeval sacred book, is in effect identical with that of Thoth among the Egyptians, Cadmus among the Phoenicians, and Palamedes among the Greeks. Palamedes? We have obtained in an extraordinary manner a 16th century medal, which is a key of the tarot. We scarcely know whether to state that this medal and the place where it was deposited were shown us in dream by the divine Paracelsus. In any case, the medal is in our possession. On one side, it depicts a juggler in a German costume of the 16th century holding his girdle with one hand and with the other a pentagram. On a table in front of him, between an open book and a closed purse, are 10 deniers of talismans, arranged in 2 lines of 3 each with a square of 4. The feet of the table form and those of the juggler 2 inverted. The obverse side of the metal contains the letters of the alphabet arranged on a magical square as follows. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, fool. It will be observed that this alphabet has only 22 letters, the V and N being duplicated, and that it is arranged in 4 quinaries, and a quaternary for base and key. The 4 final letters are 2 combinations of the duad and the triad, and read kabbalistically, they form the word Azat. By rendering to the shapes of the letters their value in primitive Hebrew, taking in for Z as it is in Latin, V for the Hebrew vowel, which is pronounced O between 2 vowels. Wait, what? The Hebrew vowel, which is pronounced O between 2 vowels? Or letters having the value of vowels, and X for the primitive Tao, which had precisely the same figure. The entire tarot is thus explained in this wonderful metal, which is worthy of Paracelsus, and we hold it at the disposal of the curious. The letters arranged by 4 times 5 are summed by the word. Why is there a Z in the middle of this Hebrew? Analogous to that of NRI and containing all the mysteries of the Kabbalah. The book of the tarot, being of such high scientific importance, it is desirable that it should not be further altered. We have examined the collection of ancient tarots preserved in the Imperial Library, and have thus collected all the hieroglyphs of which we have given a description. An important work still remains to be done, the publication of a really complete and well-executed exemplar. We shall perhaps undertake the task. Your next incarnation is Aleister Crowley. He'll handle that quite well. Vestiges of the tarot are found among all nations. As we have said, the Italian is perhaps the most faithful and best preserved, but it may be further perfected by precious indications derived from the Spanish varieties. The 2 of Cups, for example, in the Naibi is completely Egyptian, showing 2 archaic vases with ibis handles superposed on a cow. A unicorn is represented in the middle of the 4 of deniers. The 3 of Cups exhibits the figure of Isis issuing from a vase, while 2 ibises issue from 2 other vases, one with a crown for the goddess and one holding a lotus, which seems to be offering for her acceptance. The 4 acres bear... The hell just happened? There we go. Bear the image of the hieratic and sacred serpent, while in some specimens the seal of Solomon is placed at the center of the 4 of deniers instead of the symbolical unicorn. The German tarots have suffered great alteration and scarcely do more than preserve the number of the keys. Who cares then? We have a Chinese tarot before us, and the Imperial Library contains samples of others that are similar. I guess what he's establishing here is that, unlike astrology, these tarots from these different cultures are basically the same. Preserve several primeval emblems. The deniers and swords are plainly distinguishable, but it would be less easy to discover the cups and clubs. Oh shit, man! Is this how much? How much more of this? Are we gonna have to make up part 3? Let me see. Whoa, yeah, it's gonna go on and on and on and on and on. Yep. I'm glad I checked because, all right, let's push on a little bit further. And, I'll try not to drink so much San Pedro for the final. I couldn't remember any of the Greek letters. I was like, fuck it, I'm not even going to. You know how many hours of my life I've spent studying? That was ridiculous. It's like, really, man? That's the fucking tetragrammaton and you can't say it? Anyways, where are we at here? All right, we were talking about the Chinese tarots and the pentacles, and it was epic of the Gnostic and Manichaean heresies that the tarot must have been lost to the church, at which time also the meaning of the divine apocalypse perished. It was understood no longer that the seven seals of this Kabbalistic book are seven pentacles, the representation of which we give. See page. I'm not going back to 37 gangster, but at this, and that these pentacles are explained by the analogies of the numbers, characters, and figures of the tarot. Thus, the universal tradition of the one religion was a moment broken. Darkness or doubt spread upon the whole earth, and it seemed, in the eyes of ignorance, that true Catholicism, the universal revelation, had briefly disappeared. Now we're getting back to the point. The explanation of the book of St. John by the characters of the Kabbalah will be an entirely new revelation. Though foreseen by several distinguished magi, one among whom M. Augustine Chaho thus expresses himself. The poem of the Apocalypse presupposes, in the young evangelist, a complete system and traditions individually developed by himself. It is written in the form of a vision and binds in a brilliant framework of poetry the whole erudition, the whole thought of African civilization. An inspired bard, the author touches upon a series of ruling events. He draws in bold outlines the history of society from cataclysm to cataclysm and even further still. The truths which he reveals are prophecies brought from far and wide, of which he is the resounding echo. He is the voice which cries, the voice which chants the harmonies of the desert and prepares the paths for the light. His speech peals forth with mastery and compels faith, for he carries among savage nations the oracles of Io, and unveils him who is the firstborn of the sun for the admiration of civilizations to come. The theory of the four ages is found in the Apocalypse, as it is found in the books of Zoroaster and in the Bible. The gradual reconstruction of primeval federations, of the reign of God among peoples emancipated from the yoke of tyrants and the bonds of error, are clearly foretold for the end of the fourth age and the renovation of the cataclysm, exhibited at first from afar, even unto the consummation of time. The description of the cataclysm and its duration, the new world emerging from the waves and spreading in all its beauty under heaven, the great serpent, bound for a time by an angel in the depths of the abyss, finally, the dawn of that age to come, prophesied by the Word who appeared to the apostle in the beginning of his poem. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as flame of fire, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. And he had in his right hand 7 stars, and out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was as the sun shineth in his strength, such as Ormus, Osiris, Turian, the Lamb, the Christ, the Ancient of Days, the Man of the Time, and the river celebrated by Daniel, and the bright and shining fucking morning star. He is the first and the last, who was, who must be, Alpha and Omega, beginning and end. He holds the keys of the mysteries in his hands. He opens the great abyss of the central fire where death sleeps beneath. Yeah, I know. It's just my shit froze. His canopy of darkness, which sleeps the great serpent awaiting the awakening of the ages. I feel like they edited a little bit of that out of the Bible version. The author connects this sublime allegory of St. John with that of Daniel, wherein the 4 forms of the Sphinx and applied to the chief periods of history where the man's son, the word light, consoles and instructs the seer. And you know what? I just realized I need to read all that again in the beginning of a stream next time, and we need to just stop because I'm tired and this is going to be intense. So we need to chill on that right now. And I'm going to go back out to my Maloka and build a fire and shred some guitar and stuff. Was that in less than an hour? Damn, should we keep going? No, because I really do. I need to start there, I think. Because, this one kind of started babbly. And it's going to lose a lot of people. And this is where it gets to the point. So that's where we're going to start next time. If you guys have any conversation pieces for me, though, I'm here for a few more minutes for sure. What did you think of that, Mr. Nick? The fuck, man, that last bit, I was like, I always knew, you know what I mean, that book was the only part of the Bible that was like anything, Yeah, I'm kind of at a loss for words, which is weird, but true. I have a little bit of lag, so I'm giving you guys a minute to. Oh, here it is. This is going to be a lot better. There we go. Oh, it went away. This is hard. There it is. All right. Aliens and entities and whatnot. I'm not even going to put my face back. I just like this, like that. Okay, so chat, how are we doing? Do we have anything? Tripping? Yeah, I am tripping. That's for sure. So, questions, comments, anything? Otherwise, I'm going to go back out to the Maloko where it makes more sense to be in this state. It was rough today, man. I don't even want to talk about what happened earlier really yet. It was good, but it's none of your business. No, really, it's something really interesting and cool happened, but I'm just not sure if it's wise yet, so I'm gonna leave that alone. And then we just listened to a bunch of like Grateful Dead and Yngwie Malmsteen. That was messed up, man. That guy was like a literal demon. Like it hurt my pride as a guitar player to watch. All right. Well, I don't see anybody throwing questions in the shitster. So please support the channel. I'll show up with my pupils fitting in my skull next time for sure. And we'll see you whenever that happens to be. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Please join our Patreon.